Hi guys, welcome to Perpetuality. This is the Oyster Perpetual 39, a white dial reference 114300 that was discontinued last year. It is a phenomenal looking piece. I adore the white dial, and so do many of you. It being discontinued does not make it any easier to get, obviously. Now, these command a hefty premium in the secondary market. I do not think this is worth the premium that it's going for in the market right now. No Rolex is worth that premium, in fact. However, though for many that love the design and the clean looks, I think this is the purest Rolex that Rolex has ever made in recent memory. And I want to find a suitable substitute or something that will scratch the itch. We have the Ball Victory with us today with a wonderful white waffle dial. And I'm here just to check out, for the money, even less, far less than the retail of the Rolex, can you get something that is high quality, clean looking, and a great everyday wearing white dial watch that presents maybe the same kind of feeling or character as the Oyster Perpetual? We'll find out today. Both of these watches are more comparable than you think, but let's get the boring details out of the way. The Ball has 40mm width, lug length of 48mm long, and lug width of 20mm. The magic of the case, however, is in the fact it's only 11.6mm thin in the mid case. On the flip side, the Rolex Oyster Perpetual 39 shares nearly the same dimensions, except it's 39mm wide, but has the same 48mm lug-to-lug length and 20mm lug width as the Ball. There's only a bit of a difference in the mid case, being 12mm thick, but you'll see where and why that differs and matters a little bit later on. Beating heart of the Ball Victory is the caliber RR1103. It's essentially a modified ETA 2824, and it does have Ball's decorated treatment. It's been around for a long time. It's got 38 hours of power reserve. Accuracy is as good as 4 to 5 seconds per day. I'm actually quite impressed by that. But on the flip side, in stark contrast to the Ball Victory, the Oyster Perpetual 39 has the venerable caliber 3132. This has been around for a long time. The movement is deadly accurate at 2 seconds per day. Now, added to the fact that it's got 48 hours of power reserve, it does trump the Ball Victory in this way. It is a much more expensive watch, however. The dial's usually where we can see the money has gone into these watches, and you're getting your money's worth out of Rolex with the white gold indices and that white gold crown. Ball does it differently, with the steel high-polished indices featuring tritium tubes and the applied Ball logo sitting proudly on that waffle dial. Printing on both watches are sharp, the Ball's no slouch, and I can see no spillage of material. The Rolex, however, takes it to the next level. The printing is extremely sharp. It's almost like watching television in 8K. Even those rectangular sub-second plots have a high gloss sheen and definition to them. They sit proudly above that white dial. The Ball, on the other hand, with that interesting waffle pattern dial, does have depth and definition that the Rolex does not have. However, the hand stack on the Ball is quite tight, no tool marks whatsoever, and even the tritium tubes that sit perfectly on the hands seem to just fall in place like they're meant to be there. The Rolex, on the other hand, the white gold hands seem to reflect light on a much higher level than the Ball, and they seem to look like liquid metal. Both watches approach the white dial, similar but different. They do share that shimmery silver personality, and they do it excellently. Now, it all comes down to how you like your white dials, and these are some of the best. What about the bracelet? What about how these watches actually wear? We gotta dig into the finishing of this bracelet because it is a tremendous bracelet. With two pieces of steel mated together, high polished finishing, and brushed surfaces on the outside, it has more visual interest than the Rolex. Now I have to say that the clasp is the weak point here. It is a double locking buckle that you have to basically click on both sides like a butterfly clasp, and it is tricky to kind of release it and put it on the wrist. I'm not a fan of this arrangement. The ball features a case back that has the train on the back, signifying its railroad, historic, or heritage past. The overall execution of the bracelet is tremendous. It is very clean, very sharp, 20 millimeters thick all the way down. I wished it tapered a bit. The clasp is secure. I've got no complaints there. I just wish it was easier to operate. Now both of these watches are basically coming with bracelets, and the Rolex does things a little bit differently. I have to say that looking at the Rolex by itself, this Oyster bracelet, I understand why people praise it so much. There's just enough space between the links to vent your wrist during the summer time so it will stay cool. And it is fluid. It wears on the wrist like jewelry. Comfortable. This one, I just wish that the Oyster Perpetual 39 had an easy link extension for extra wearability. But overall, case finishing, down to the mirror polish finish of the 904L steel, it is stunning to behold. It's almost like jewelry, like I've mentioned in the past. Both watches do high polished surfaces extremely well. The Rolex has a screw down crown. Now mind you, it's only good for about 100 meters. That's plenty. Getting back to that clasp, you're not getting a sport buckle clasp, you're just getting a single lock mechanism here with high polished surfaces under the buckle itself. Altogether, this bracelet, it is elegant, it's sporty, and it is extremely remarkably well finished, and has to be for the money. 904L steel sometimes is hyped up, but it does hold a brushed and polished finish extremely well. That's one of the strong points of this watch. Now mind you, when you look at the way that this bracelet tapers down, all the way down to the bracelet, I think it's much more elegant than the ball itself. Though the ball is good, the Rolex is better in this regard. In stark contrast to the Oyster Perpetual 39, the ball has a brushed finish at top on the flank of the lugs, connecting to the bracelet. Then on the side of the case you will see high polished finishing with a bit of chamfer to disconnect the brushed surface, and the crown itself does feature the railroad logo, connecting the watch to its railroad history. Now, I'm proud to say that the overall execution and finishing of this watch is tremendous. I would say it's nearly on the level of Omega and their watches and their offerings at a higher price point. You can see there's strong delineation between the brushed surfaces and the high polished side of the case. Mirror-like. I do appreciate the thinness of this case, and I cannot preach this enough. Let's see how it wears on the wrist. The Ball Victory does wear nicely on my 6¼ inch wrist. The fact that the 48mm lug-to-lug length does not over-encroach the extremities of my wrist indicates that this is quite comfortable for a wrist as small as 5.8 inches, all the way up to 7¼ inches. Mind you, my only gripe is that the lugs don't taper down for comfort. On the flip side, the Oyster Perpetual 39 shares the same lug-to-lug length, albeit being a little bit smaller in case width, and even the thickness at 12mm, marginally thicker than the ball, is not apparent because the lugs taper down much more aggressively than the ball. What are my final impressions on both of these watches? I think if you're looking for the alternative to the Oyster Perpetual 39 to get your feet wet, there are few and far choices. under the $10,000 range. There are a lot of micro-brand offerings that are quite competitive from Monta and from the likes of Astor Banks, for example. However, if you want the Oyster Perpetual for the history, the heritage, you're really only going to get it from one watch, the Oyster Perpetual. On the flip side, if you can't justify paying the premiums to get that watch, the Ball gives you a very, very nice watch for the money. Now, my biggest gripe is that date wheel. I can't stand seeing that date wheel cut out that beautiful dial. I cannot imagine how much better this watch would be if it was a no date. Ball, please release one. I think it would be a fantastic watch. All that's been said, for under $2,000, the Ball Victory provides incredible value for the money. Is it a Rolex? Absolutely not. Is it something that should be compared next to a Rolex? Only if you have an itch that cannot be scratched for a white dial with a silvery personality, with a solid bracelet, beautiful finishing that you can see here. You will not be disappointed with this watch. The other fact of the basis is that this watch, mind you, has been around for some time. The bracelet itself is solid. It hasn't gotten much attention, and Ball watches are kind of doing their own thing right now, and I appreciate that greatly. With that being said, guys, thank you so much for watching today. I'll show you what the Lume looks like in the next video clip here, so still stay around, and if you like the video, please like the video, and consider subscribing, as that would help me out to create more content for you guys, have more exciting videos coming your way, and I will most definitely catch you in the next one. Now guys, I want to show you the Lume, or rather the tritium here, but it's tricky to do so for the Ball, being that it doesn't react to ultraviolet light the same way as superluminova or lumibright. Tritium has its own glow, and it's faint, very subtle in fact. It does appear quite prevalent and it does last quite long. Now I'll show you on Ball's website, credit to their website here. There is yellow tritium tubes on the hands and on the 12 o'clock indicator. Simultaneously talking about Lume, the Oyster Perpetual 39 has their own proprietary Lume from Rolex, and it does seem to be evenly applied, it does have good longevity, and it does react quite nicely. Is it remarkable for the price point? I'd argue maybe not, but it is functional, and I do like the way it looks.